we have the time. We just need to allocate it better. And like, I feel like, make no mistake, if you listen to this and you say like, I do want to unplug, you are going to feel uncomfortable. You are going to feel resistance. But that's not a sign not to do it. That's a sign that there's something deeply meaningful waiting for you on the other side. And you should go see what that thing is.
Well, after 40 minutes of just catching up and chit-chatting, I said, Hannah, let's just hit record. It's always so great to see you. You have been so supportive of me in the last few months. And I know, like, we're in the author world and all that, but I just want to say as a close friend, just hi. Just, this is cool. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, this is how we first came into each other's orbit, was from a podcast interview. And then it just never stopped from there, which is the best.
One of these days, I'm going to come over and do Friday night pizza night with you, Lane, and Novi. I can't wait.
Yes, it's going to be amazing. We cannot wait. We'll let you pick the movie.
Let's go. Man on Fire, Denzel Washington, Dakota Fanning. Done.
Okay, I've never seen it.
Wait. Really?
So when we started Pizza Friday, it was this realization of like, oh, so you haven't seen movies before. Like, I'm like being reborn again or something through watching all these amazing films.
It's my favorite movie of all time.
Okay, Man on Fire. Okay, we'll save it for you. For you.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so we've been talking. I think we should just bring people into the conversation we've been having. There's this call to awaken ourselves, to shut down distraction and noise. We've got a lot to talk about today, but I think I want to start here for everyone now hanging out with us, because you and I were talking, and I said, Hannah, I started this social media detox 6 days ago. DM responses, the automated DM responses are fully loaded. Burnout hit a month and a half ago. It scared me. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
So I'm taking drastic measures to just heal really well right now. Let's just start here then. We've talked about a lot thus far, but your story of burnout is similar as well. Just take us in wherever you want.
Yeah. So, I think a lot of people, it's like I grew up with straddling the line between social media, but then also remembering when we had to wait by the phone for our crush to call, and the day that we got caller ID and it was the best day ever. But it was I was in that generation that was waiting to get to college so I'd get the email address so I could get on Facebook. And back then social media, it was fun and it was life-giving and, but I do remember specifically taking a course in college. It was a marketing course because I was a marketing major. And I remember the teacher talking about this new term, social media, and feeling oh my gosh, this is going to be such a game changer. But then also this sense of dread, oh gosh, if we are not careful, this is going to disconnect us completely. And I don't know if that was prophetic at the time. No one else was talking about that. I immediately went looking for the research and it didn't exist. I think the only person that was talking about it was this man named Mark Bowerlin. He was out of Emory University here in Atlanta, and he was talking about how with the rise of the internet, the generations were getting dumber. That was the only person that was really touching the topic. And so I was you know what, we'll wait 10, 15 years to see what are the ramifications. Well, we are now living in the space where the paint has dried and we are seeing the ramifications. And it's not good. It's not good. And that was my own personal story. It's I grew up online. I love the internet. I love social media. I built a readership from there. But I got to this place where I was, my daughter was about 12 months old. She was, just a little over a year old. And it was my 33rd birthday. It was a completely unexpected turn of direction. I think unplugging was something I would utilize every so often in creative work or on the weekends I would try to be more present. But I remember sitting at my friend's beach house and journaling and trying to come up with what is going to be my goal for the year? I always have to have a goal, you know? And I just remember feeling so tired and so burnt out. And I was so tired of treating myself like I was a self-improvement project. Like, if I could just do X, Y, and Z, then I would be good enough. If I could just hustle harder, then I would be worth it. And I remember in that quiet time and in that tiredness, like I just heard this nudge. It's the best I can describe it. This nudge that just was like, turn off your phone. And I didn't know much more. I didn't have a challenge in that moment of like 1,000 hours in a year. I just knew, I was like, I just heard that thing so clearly. And I turned off my phone that day and I didn't turn it on for like the rest of the day. And my birthday is often a time, or it used to be a time, where I'd be really anxious about like, are enough people going to say happy birthday? Have they forgotten me? Like, am I important? Like, and I didn't feel any of that day. I just felt so present. I felt so celebrated. I felt so seen with the people around me. And I wrote in the book, I think, like, in those 12 hours, I felt more myself than I had felt that entire year. And so I knew immediately there's something to this. And that's where I came up with that goal for myself, because as much as like I love a project and like would love to be free form, I also feel like you cannot manage what you don't measure. And so I had to find a way to measure what I was doing. And I knew I didn't want to go off the grid. I knew I could not get rid of social media because it was my livelihood, my career, and I love connecting with my readers. And so I stepped into this year being like, is there a balance? Can I strike a balance? Does it exist? And that's kind of how the challenge unfolded.
So good. Okay, so I want to spring off this. You can't manage what you don't measure. And I'm thinking about 3 different things that happen to all of us when we've hit the wall, when we're facing burnout or just exhaustion, or we're just overextended. And I think about these 3 things in particular: emotional maturity, relational skills, both nonverbal and verbal, and spiritual formation, spiritual maturity. You want to speak to those 3 things. Again, emotional maturity, relationship skills, spiritual formation. We could even use that phrase that you cited earlier, we're getting dumber. What's happening in those 3 domains?
Yeah.
Before we talk about a solution, like, let's just kind of shine the light on and biopsy our current cultural moment in those 3 domains. What's happening, Hannah?
I mean, I think it's just information overload. Information overload. And I think that the turning point was COVID. I think what happened was we were already pretty connected on our phones. We were all on social media. We were all in our phones. And then this came along and we needed to use our phones as a lifeline. Like, that's what it was to us, a lifeline.
They're appendages.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I don't know that that was anything that we knew like in like hindsight, like, you know, hindsight is 2020, but I feel like 2020, no pun intended. But like, no. I mean, I even remember it. Like well, you know what I mean?
I do.
I remember specifically like being 9 months pregnant, the world had shut down, and I had some kind of unplugged boundaries, and they all went out the window because I told myself a story that if I didn't stay plugged in, I was going to miss it. I was going to miss it. I thought that if I could consume enough news, if I could watch enough stories, like somehow the solution to the anxiety was going to be there. But like, we're looking to the wrong source is what we're doing. And what's dangerous about it is that we're looking to a source that is also giving us the thing we are wired to receive, which is dopamine. And so you can get dopamine from reading your Bible. You can get dopamine from taking a walk outside. You can get dopamine from sunlight, but you get a cheaper, faster form from the device right here. And so your brain, like, it tricks you into being like, I want that. I need that. That's what I need. And if it's easy and I don't have to get off the couch, why not? And like, to go back to what you were saying about those different places, emotional and spiritual, and what was the last one? It was
emotional maturity, relationship skills, and
relationships.
Maturity.
Yeah, like it feeds a need in all of those areas if you think about it. Like, if we don't want to deal with our emotions, we can check out and we can call it checking in. If we don't really want to interact and have hard conversations in a coffee shop, we can claim I'm really surrounded because I have 37 text threads today. You know what I mean? Like, and then when it comes to spiritual, it's like, well, I don't have to get into the Bible and figure out what it says and forge a relationship with God and dig. I can just consume podcasts, sermons, reels, books, information. And I feel like our brain is just like, yeah, no, I'm not designed for this. I wasn't designed to take in this much at such a rapid pace. I'm burning out and we're hitting a wall.
Yeah, I want to actually just hit this nail.
Hit it.
We're not good at having hard conversations. Why and how do we do it better? Like, any thoughts on having hard conversations more often, when appropriate, doing it better? And I'll relate it to this, because shortly after you said that, you're talking about the fact that these days we don't have to dig. We don't have to dig for spiritual maturity. So perhaps what's missing in the metaphor is we have atrophied muscles now. So folks, lean in and listen. Like the muscles of relational strength, the muscles of perseverance, steadfastness, enduring faith, those muscles have atrophied because we're not using them. What are the signs, Hannah?
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to go deep here. I love this.
Oh, let's do it. Let's go. We got all day.
Yeah. I love this.
We'll be here till midnight. Let's go.
We'll see.
Hey, I'll go. We'll do a Joe Rogan 6-hour podcast.
All right, Rogan, let's go. We're gonna call your bluff right now. Sorry, folks, this is gonna be a long one.
And people love long form because our brains are designed for long form.
Well, I love this because this is my vision for this, because you are one of my closest friends in my life, and right now I feel like we're at coffee and we get to invite some folks to just hang out with us.
Yeah, love it.
Guys, listen, if you're listening, pour yourself a fresh cup and let's just hit it. So Hannah,
get a latte.
What are the signs that we don't know how to, from an emotional maturity perspective, from a relational underdevelopment, what are the signs that we, number one, don't know how to have hard conversations, and then we'll get to how do we have them?
I mean, I think that the signs are pretty clear cut, and a lot of us have them, right? Like we're isolating. Like we're in the place where it's like we are so frazzled that we don't even want to make plans to see each other in person. I don't know if you feel that, but I feel like making plans is another level of hard these days post-pandemic. Like it's just like everybody's busy and then everybody's tired, and the way that we want to actually veg out is just to like sit on our couch and watch a show so we don't have to think. But like anytime you sit down with a friend and you make the time and you fight to meet them face to face, you leave and you're like, that was like water to my soul. Like that was what I needed, you know? And so I think it is actually the fact that all of our relationships are at our fingertips. I just don't think it's the best thing in the world. I just don't think that, like, I think we've convinced ourselves, well, if I send an encouraging text, it's enough. I'm connecting. And in actuality, no, you need people, and you need people face to face. And like, that doesn't mean that you can't get beautiful, amazing relationships from tech, because like, you know, like we're an example of that. But like, you also need to see your people. You also need to show up at the door. And like, there's a story that like has been so pivotal for me in the unplugged hours, about how I was visiting my mom last year. It was her birthday, and it was the last day of our trip, and it was my mom's birthday, but her friends kept showing up at the door. They kept just showing up to the door, uninvited, unannounced, coming in, sitting at the table. One friend like made a strawberry shortcake with like a homemade whipped cream. Another friend went to Whole Foods and just got a bunch of goodies for my mom. Like, people just kept showing up. And I mean, you would have thought it was like a unicorn parade or something. I was like, what is happening right here? And my mom is like, this is just what we do. And I'm like, no, it's not what we do. Like, that's not what me and my friends do. We Venmo when somebody's had a hard day and they need a coffee. We DoorDash when somebody needs a meal.
Oh, dang.
But we don't show up at the door anymore. And I think what we did is we swapped accessibility for availability. I think availability...
Say that again. That's killer.
We've swapped accessibility, the ability to always be on and always be accessible, for true availability, which means that we have the space and the margin to hold one another, to hold the hard pieces, to show up at the door. And it's an acquired taste. And I mean, I always share that, like, right after that happens, I mean, I flew home with like more mission and purpose for my life than I've ever felt. And I was like, no, I'm going to be the person that shows up at the door. And I built it into my calendar. I built a weekly tradition with my daughter where once a week we pick somebody to bless. We go to the store, or we go to get flowers, or we do something we know that they're going to love. And if possible, we go to their door. We show up at their workplace, and we just let them know, hey, I love you. I see you and I care. And like, yeah, it's the harder route, but like, I'm telling you, those actions and interactions, those have filled me more than anything has filled me in like the last 10 years.
Yeah, I love this. So accessibility versus availability. Where there's availability, there's vulnerability because we're up close. When we're up close, there is bound to be conflict in relationships. So earlier we were talking about the inability or the immaturity to have hard conversations. Let me just use a case study in your life. So you talked about it. You and Lane are at date night. It's going great. All of a sudden, in your words, you're like, I instigated this. I'm pretty sure 99.8% this was on you to instigate.
Yep.
So you're silent, and just the scream of silence is
in the
deafening
car.
In the car. What does having a hard conversation require of us? What do we have to do?
I mean, I think it requires, there's a lot that it requires. It requires vulnerability. It requires the willingness to be wrong. There's something about Lane, and this has always stuck with me, that from early on in our relationship, whenever we would get in a fight, because people fight, I keyed into, from the very beginning, he would ask me at the end of the conversation or the argument, whenever we had resolved it, he would say to me, do you forgive me? And then I would say, I forgive you. And it was to him, I think it was like second nature, but I was like, what a powerful exchange at the end of the conversation to say, do you forgive me? And we do it with our daughter now too. And like sometimes like, because you know what, I'll mess up or I'll get impatient. And like, it happened like 2 weeks ago. Like I just was like really impatient with her when I was like not seeing what she needed in that moment, you know, like it was like, she had been at summer camp all week. She was really overstimulated. She just needed to rest. And I had done a Publix delivery, which if you've ever done a grocery store delivery, you end up having to go to the store to get all the things that the delivery did not give you. And I was like, come on, we got to put the shoes on. We got to get in the car. We got to go. And she just like was breaking down over it. And I was impatient. And on the drive over, I said, you know, I'm really sorry that I was impatient with you. Like, do you forgive me? And she was like, I forgive you, with like a little B, like, and it was all that to say, you know, that was a side tangent. We'll have lots of them, but, I've just always noticed that to be like a really tender exchange, to be like, okay, that's our closing loop. Do you forgive me? Yes, I forgive you. And we're practicing forgiveness. But what's crazy is like when you bring technology into it, it's like the lines get blurred. Like suddenly we can ghost one another. Suddenly, when I didn't like the tone of your text, I can just choose to not have you in my orbit anymore. And like, it's not actually how like friendship was like designed to work, but I'm afraid that we're devaluing people and we're stripping people of dignity because of these devices that I think, you know, like the fact that we can ghost somebody when it gets tough is like, that is another human on the other side of the phone who needs to know closure and what closure feels like. And so it breaks my heart, honestly. It breaks my heart because it's been such a vital part of my story that it was like God was writing this story in me long before I ever knew that I would write this book. And like, I wrote about it in the story about meeting this woman named Maggie at a nursing home. And this was back in 2009. Like, we had Facebook, and she said, my granddaughter talks to her friends on a screen, and that's not friendship. You need to be able to see your best friend. You need to be able to smell your best friend. And like, I think Maggie was sounding a warning call to all of us. And it's not to negate the beauty of technology, but like, if you don't have somebody who can show up at your door at 2 a.m., that's a problem. You need that, and you have to fight for that. Like my friend Christina is a perfect example of it, you know. I always like give my friends as examples because I'm a work in progress, you know, but there was something that happened like a few weeks ago in just like business that kind of threw me off, and I tried to just get over it and not feel like it was a grief process, you know. And one day I just was like, you know what? This hurts, and I have to let somebody in and just let them know that this hurts. And so I shared it with her. Not 5 minutes later did I see her car pull up in front of the house. She drove to me because she knew, like, yeah. And that's what I'm saying is like, if we have the chance, when we have the chance, we have to do that. And like, there's resistance, but like, we have to fight for one another in this world where it's like the devices that we're holding that can one day make us feel so seen can in an instant make us feel like no one knows us.
Oh gosh, the metaphor is so extending here, because I just wonder if unintentionally these doping coping tactics are making us dull and thus ineffective. So let's look at it like a sword or a knife, a really sharp knife. I'll say knife because Lane's a foodie, and I know that your kitchen is bustling with all of the good things.
It is.
Speaking about relationships, when we don't have those people, like your friend, we don't have to enter the abrasion of conflict that makes us sharper and more effective. Proverbs says, as iron sharpens iron, like this is the call to relational strength to make us sharper and more effective for life. Here's the question. I had no idea that I was going to ask this. How do you break up well? Look at the dating scene today. How do you break up well?
Oh man. Wow, this is cool. Let's go.
How do you not do it? The dumbest way to break up with someone would be, I don't know, just take us there, wherever you think.
Well, I think that we're very careless with the breakups. I don't think you should break up over a phone unless you absolutely have to, unless you're in a long distance relationship. If you have seen that person, felt that person, know the sound of that person's laughter, you should be at their door and you should be breaking up in person because that person deserves that. And I think that's what we don't see when we're in this like digital dating world of collateral damage of like, it strikes against you every time somebody ghosts you, every time somebody doesn't respond on an app, anytime somebody just like poof ups and vanishes, like that is weighing on you. That is making you feel like you are a not worthwhile person, you know? And so like, I just remember like, here, let's go there. I ghosted a guy once. Completely ghosted him. And I didn't want to have the hard conversation. I didn't want to have to say like, hey, I didn't think we vibed. I didn't think we clicked. And I'll never forget that he called me out a few weeks later. He sent me a message just to be like, hey, like, I know that you ghosted me and I just wanted to let you know it hurt and it wasn't anything I expected of you. And I just hope that like you do better and you don't do that again. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I felt gutted, but I also was like, yeah, yes, thank you for sending that message. And I remember a few years later when my assistant got ghosted and she was so sad, I was like, you know what? When the dust settles, I want you to send that text Because maybe you're a casualty in this, but maybe it will make him think long enough for the next person. And I think that's what we don't understand when everything is so digital, is that like, you're not like, until I marry you, you're not mine. And so it's my responsibility to care for you and treat you with the utmost dignity until you get to the person that you're supposed to be with. It doesn't mean I have to like walk you to the altar if I'm not feeling it. But like, we deserve the decency of an in-person breakup, or we at least deserve the decency of not doing it over text when you know the sound of somebody's voice.
Really, the thesis, I don't want to get to the punchline too quickly, but I've got to set this up for the rest of the conversation, because really this is taking back life that has, in your words, slowly become less present, less awake, and less vibrant. Describe for folks what less present, less awake, and less vibrant looked like for you, what it could look like for a lot of us, so that in order to hit this target, we first see it.
Yeah. I was exhausted all the time. I don't think I was aware of it, but I was absolutely defining my worth by what I could produce, what I could do, what I could offer, who was reading me, who my followers were, all of that stuff. Like, you can say that stuff does not affect you, but like, I think it affects a lot of us at different points until we course correct. I felt like I was giving the best parts of myself to people online that didn't even know me. That by the time I got to the end of the day, I had nothing left for the people I loved. And, it was taking from me. It was taking from me, but it was also part of the game. It's like, you just keep posting, you just keep sharing, you just keep giving people parts of yourself. And, I don't know, before I even started unplugging, I remember being like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to give them my husband. I don't want to give them my daughter. I don't want to give things that are just too precious and tender to me. And, anybody that like would follow me on social media now, like, I have scaled way back on that stuff. I don't share my daughter online anymore. Like, I share her with like close friends because she didn't ask to be a piece of content. And, I think it's like, it was performative. It was things I didn't know until I started powering down, that I was like, oh, wow, a lot of my hustle mentality came from always being on. But honestly, I think the biggest one that scared me was I found myself being really angry and apathetic. And I wanted to care so badly, but I didn't care. And there's a line in the book about how saying like, I was trying to do everything all at once and care about everything, or like feeling everything so much that I ended up feeling nothing at all. And I think that was the part that really made me feel like, oh no, we have to change this. Because like, I am like a very much like, wear your heart on the sleeve. Like, I want to cry with you. I want to feel the moment with you. And I didn't have any of that. I just didn't care. I didn't have the capacity to care anymore. And so I would say those are some of the warning signs, the prominent ones: the exhaustion, the performing, the feeling like you could just never stop. You could never take a break.
I just jotted this down as you said this, and I want to dive into this with you. Basically, I heard you say that our hearts and those closest to us are not pieces of content.
Yeah.
That hits deep, because I don't think anyone is malicious in their intent, but because of the frenetic pace at which we run, I think it's easy to allow the moments of life and the people in our lives, those closest to us, to become pieces of content. Where does that shift start? In other words, in your words, relentlessly present. Shift from, my heart is not a piece of content. This relationship is not a piece of content. We're not just dumping content all over the internet because it's affecting every area of my life.
Yeah. Because I used to be the queen of it. Like, literally, I was like, okay, Taylor Swift can do it, I can do it. I mean, Taylor Swift is the queen of it. She is. Like, and I love me some Taylor Swift, but like a lot of the albums that we're listening to are based off of people, human people that she was in relationship with. And so whenever I refer to like writing about other people, I always call it Taylor Swifting in my writing classes. But I mean, I remember when I was in college and I just started blogging, and I remember breaking things off with a guy, and he said to me, I just don't want to become a piece of content to you.
Oh, gosh.
And I wrote about him the next day. And I didn't for a long time see the ramifications of like, oh, when we write about somebody, when we post about somebody, we eternalize that person. We're eternalizing that person. And what we all need at the end of the day is a redemption story. And when we cancel people, when we minimize people and their existence to these digital interactions, we're not giving them redemption. We're not giving them a chance to have the hero's journey. But I think part of it, if you want to go to like, how do we not do this? I think that part of it that I had to learn, and this was not instant. This wasn't like turn off your phone and a month later I was feeling it. I went a long time feeling like, if I don't share this, does it even matter? And I feel that's a lot of us. And you see it when it's like, whether you are an influencer online sharing every pocket of your life, or you are somebody who feels like, I don't have much going on, but man, when I get to Disney World, I'm going to document the snot out of that thing. You know, like we want to share those moments. And I think that it can come from a beautiful place, but I also think it can come from a place of like, I have to share this because it gives me worth, because it gives me value, because it shows people I am doing something worthwhile. And I had to step back and say, okay, but like if I make this beautiful breakfast and I don't snap a photo of it, did it nourish me? Was it enough for me? If I have an amazing date night with my husband and we're at a fancy restaurant and we don't document it, is it enough for us? And at the beginning of that, I honestly don't think it was. It didn't feel like enough because I was so used to getting commentary on every little thing that I did. And we're not designed for that. We're not designed for that. And so slowly, but over time, things stopped. They stopped having meaning. And I remember a pivotal moment for me was like before I started unplugging, I was in the hospital because I just had Novely. She was 24 hours old. And I had snapped a little video of her like kicking and moving. And she's like wearing this little, I don't know, this little felt top they gave her at the hospital. And a girl sent me a message. She didn't mean to send it to me. She meant to send it to a friend. And she said, I'm so curious to see what she's going to dress this baby in because she has no fashion sense herself. And I remember like it hit like a dagger. I mean, it still does, because it was this realization of like, oh my gosh, people are already commenting on her. People are already putting their opinions on my daughter. And oh my gosh, people are having conversations about me and what I put on my body. And it was a turning point without realizing it of like, I can't give them these precious parts of me. Because like the moment you share something and it doesn't get the response you secretly hoped and wanted, you begin devaluing it in your own brain. And I can't do that. I can't do it. And we do it all the time for our relationships or our art or the books that we write. If it does not get the response, are you okay? Or are you suddenly starting to think maybe it wasn't as good as I thought it was, or maybe I shouldn't be as proud as I thought I should be? And so what's really interesting about this book is that I wrote it in a very hidden place. I did not document any part of the writing process. I did not share it. I didn't tell anybody about it until I had to announce it for marketing purposes, because I wanted it to be enough for me that I wrote this book and that I claimed back vital parts of myself. And I'm very, very proud of this book because this book feels like it was written by the person I lost more than a decade ago. Like the person that was creative and the person that wanted to tell stories and the person that, like, I didn't sign up to just tell people, here's what you need to do. I feel like everybody in the world is yelling, here's what you need to do. Here's the top 3 tips. Here's the 5 things you need to do to be worth it. And it felt like I was getting back to who I really wanted to be. Somebody who would just write you a love letter and let you know, hey, it matters that you are here. And I think that you should stay because I think it's worth it to be here. And so, but that's my victory. It doesn't matter who buys the book. I hope you do. But like, my victory is that I did something for myself and I got back a part of myself that I honestly didn't even know that I had lost until I started unplugging. Whew. I'm going to send you like money for therapy later.
I just want to honor this space. I feel really responsible to handle this moment really well. You're one of my closest friends, and I'm so proud of you. I am just immeasurably proud of you, Hannah, and I just want to say that publicly. I believe in you so much. This book, you and I chatted for 35 minutes or so before we even got going, and I texted you earlier today and with some screenshots, and I want to validate what you just said because, Hannah, I think you've given us, dang it, I don't even want to make this about the book. I want to make this about what you just shared because it's so precious. There's this vulnerability that I sense from you now, in knowing you now for six-ish, little over 6 years. There's this vulnerability that is full of, I want to be, as you said, relentlessly present because I care about what really matters most. And I just want to, I want to thank you for being so vulnerable. If it's okay to ask this, answer this to the extent you're comfortable, but describe Hannah at 23, 24, 25, because that's, that's in the 10-year window for you. Who was she? Who is she? Yeah.
I mean, she was the girl who started a love letter writing organization and like didn't care if it ever made $1. I still vividly remember the day I started my blog, and I remember the first person that had ever read my words that wasn't at my college and like wasn't a Facebook friend. And I remember how excited I was and how privileged I felt to be able to like reach somebody, and like the internet gave me that gift. And I think one of the things that does break my heart is like, I see a lot of people walking away from social media, and I get it and I understand it, because if we can't figure out that it's a tool, it will end up using us more than we use it. But like, when I got online, like when I got on the internet, like I just remember like I was just become a Christian, and I heard so clearly from God that he was calling me to the internet. He wasn't calling me to a stage. He wasn't even calling me to write books. I heard so clear that I was like, I'll give my whole life to this, that I was being called to the internet. And so it's like, I know the irony of writing a book about unplugging, and like, I'm still on social media because I was called there, and I don't think I'm going to be called away. Like, I'm called to be a light in a really dark place. But 10 years ago, I had a balance, and I liked to share things online because it was just fun to share things. And like 10 years ago, we put these like crappy filters up, and we would post 3 or 4 times a day because we just thought it was fun. Like, it wasn't strategic. It wasn't calculated. It wasn't because I needed a ton of followers. Like, when I got into this work, it was because I wanted to see the one, and I lost that along the way. And I started operating by the metrics that other people told me that I should operate by. And all of that fell off of me in the unplugged hours. All of it. And even down to like the way that the book was written. I wrote my first book on yellow notepads. I have them right here. Yes, the whole book written longhand, and my second draft was typed. And it was like this whimsical, magical experience. And then the second book typed, the third book typed. The Unplugged Hours was written completely on yellow notepads.
No.
Yeah, completely. I have all the notepads in a filing system right here. It is the most inefficient process ever, but I mean, like, wow, did it make me feel alive? Like,
it's part of you, Hannah.
Yeah, it is.
This message, okay, I get it, folks. I'll clue you in. I don't think, well, I'll just say it. Hannah, I told you this book, this is a prophetic message. I think I understand why I said that now. This feels like, and it's why I texted you today, because I felt like you guys got to get this book, page 65. Hannah's describing her third date with her now husband, Lane. And I texted you and I said, what is happening right now? I just got pummeled by this. And there's a sentence in here I'm just going to read. I'll read two, actually. I'd done the impressive dates. I'd done the fancy restaurants and activities. And folks, lean in. This is the cry of your heart because you reach out to me and tell me this. But what I was looking for was for someone to partner with. Yeah. Tell me about the tears right now, Hannah. I'm not trying to trivialize the moment.
I can't believe I'm crying this much. Oh my gosh, I haven't processed any of it, you know? Or my empathy is back full swing, and that's great. But I think what happened throughout this process, without even realizing it, because it was a very hidden process, and it was very much a process in which I learned, I'm not going to get a reward from this world. It's not a number of books sold. It's not a list. It's none of those things. And the Lord has made that very clear to me. It's like, I am the one that gives you the reward. It's me. But like when you're in the writing room and every single day you have to bank on that and you have to trust that, like it's very, it's vulnerable and it's hard because it's almost like you took your diary and now you're publishing it, you know, like, cause you wrote it in such an unseen way. But I think the reason I'm crying so much is because if you just look at the front of the book and the dedication, like it's for my mom. Like I wrote it for my mom. And, you know, I think about how lucky I am to have been raised by one of the most present people that you will ever meet. And how, you know, my mom would never say that, but like our presence holds so much power, and in a world where like it is so hard to wake up feeling like you are seen, like you are known, like you matter, like I think it's a full on war of the enemy that we are this distracted and we are this clinging to our devices. Is like if he can get us to not be present, I mean people end their lives over that. People, like, this is an actual war. And I think that there's that part of me that is like, oh, okay, like, I didn't realize it as a kid, but this was the most important, most valuable thing that my mom could ever give me. And the writing was birthed out of that place. And the writing was birthed out of a place of, like, I do not want to put a message out there if I do not walk my talk. Like, behind closed doors and out in the streets, I want it to be exactly the same, you know? And, yeah, I'm so sorry for crying so much, no. It also felt really good.
I'm not trying to trivialize this at all. I actually think it's a pretty holy thing, and I really mean that sincerely. I want to hold this with great responsibility because there's a weight to this, Hannah. You're hitting so many notes that deserves so much more time even for conversation, because I think you're exactly right. The already defeated enemy of our souls cannot create, but he can distort. I've heard it said this way, that the enemy's not trying to get us on his side. He's trying to get us on our own side, which means if we're defeated and distracted and depressed, we don't have the vitality to steward this short life of ours.
Yeah.
Isaiah chapter 50, verse 4, ESV says this, and I think this is emblematic of your life and this season. The Lord God has given me the tongue of those who are taught, that I may know how to sustain with a word him who is weary. Morning by morning he awakens my ear to hear as those who are taught. And then Isaiah 50 in the latter part, I think it's in, yeah, here it is, Hannah. Verse 7. But the Lord God helps me. He helped you 10 years ago. He's helping you now. Therefore, I have not been disgraced, even though the voice and the tactics of the enemy say, shut up, stay quiet, stay hidden, you're a mess, it's too late, whatever. Therefore, I have set my face like a flint, and I know that I shall not be put to shame. Here's the line that gets me every time. He who vindicates me is near. And I feel like a word for someone today, and maybe this is the prophetic call of this. This call to being unplugged, to unplug, is way more than, hey, shut your phones off for your brain health, guys. There's a clarion call. I told Hannah this before we hit record today, guys. There is this clarion call to be actively and relentlessly present, in your words, Hannah, because he who vindicates us is near. And the Lord is saying, rise up, have eyes to see, ears to hear what the Spirit is speaking. Rouse yourself. Ephesians 5, wake up, you sleeper. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, because there's an assignment. This is a stewardship. I love the fact that this book, Hannah, I think you have the right perspective, and we're not even talking to authors today, but you have a perspective on the stewardship of this message that I think is critical for your longevity in life.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I needed to live this message. I had to live this message. And I remember when I first started unplugging, and I had conversations with the marketing team at my publisher house, and they were like, this is a book, this is a book, this is a book. And I said, no. I was like, it's really important that I go through this year for my life, not for a book, like for my life. I'm not going to research while I'm unplugging. I'm not going to add meaning where there isn't meaning yet. Like, I need to just learn to be present, because that is what my husband needs. That is what my daughters needs. That's what my friends need. Like, and I had to reach the end of it. And then still months later, I was like, I don't think it's a book. I don't know if it's a book. And I remember just telling God, like, if you want it to be a book, you'll make it abundantly clear. And he ended up making it abundantly clear. But like, make no mistake, like it was for me, and it was for longevity, and it was for, I thought I was just turning off the phone to, exactly like you said, become a little healthier, be more mindful. No. I'm telling you, if you turn off the phone and you keep turning off the phone, you will recover your life. And Jesus said it. Are you tired? Are you weary? Come away with me to a desolate place and recover your life. Come away with me to a lonely place. Lonely is not the same as alone. And recover your life. We don't know how to sit with ourselves. We don't know how to face hard things. We don't know how to be creative anymore. We don't know how to get off the hamster wheel. And I'm telling you, like, I'm just telling you, like, you're in there. You're not lost. There is a person that you were before all the noise got in, and you can get back to that person. You can. And like, I'm just speaking from a place of experience of like, and I'm speaking from a place of balance. I get on social media every day for my work. I'm very prayerful about the things that I post, because I'm not there to make noise. I am there to be like a light piercing through the darkness. I'm not there for followers. I'm not there for virality. That's not it anymore. I am there to see people. But I am telling you that you can. It's not even about getting off the phone so much as you start to focus on what you are paying attention to. Because you could be completely unplugged and still have these horrible thoughts in your mind that you need to fix and clean up and like get back to a good standing with yourself. And so I think for me, it's more so like, okay, well, like, where am I placing my attention? Because attention is a currency, and tech is not the enemy. It's our attention and our attention spans. Because like even just the other day, I was sitting in my quiet time and I'd finished up the quiet time, and I have this practice that I just like to, I won't even say I like to do it, because honestly, I feel a lot of resistance towards it, and I don't even thoroughly enjoy it, but like, I like to reach out to people, you know, if I haven't talked to them in a while, if I just want to like shoot a text, because tech is not bad, tech is not the enemy. But I feel a resistance every single time that I do it. And I don't think that resistance is accidental, because I feel like we feel resistance when the thing actually matters, when there's something waiting for us on the other side. And I literally like I got my phone, and I just scrolled through my contacts with my eyes closed, and boom. And I was like, I'm going to send that person a text. And I sent her a text just about like, hey, I'm thinking about you. Like, this is what I love about you. Like, we talk, but we don't talk all that often. And I sent the text, and like not a minute later, she said to me, I'm walking into a doctor's appointment. You're the only one who knows that I have a confirmed pregnancy after loss. And this felt like God saying, I see you. And so that's where I'm saying is like, no, like social media can still be beautiful. Phone calls can still be beautiful. We don't need to go live in a commune off the grid. But where are you placing your attention? And when it comes to mindlessly scrolling, is that what you want to do with these precious, sparse hours? Or do you want to go write a letter? Or do you want to take a walk? Or do you want to go to the gym? Or do you want to make a meal? Because I think the problem is we're all running around saying, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. We have the time. We just need to allocate it better. And like, I feel like, make no mistake, if you listen to this and you say like, I do want to unplug, you are going to feel uncomfortable. You are going to feel resistance. But that's not a sign not to do it. That's a sign that there is something deeply meaningful waiting for you on the other side. And you should go see what that thing is.
And the only way you will have the ability to recognize and address what you just described, what I hear you saying, is by slowing the distractions, minimizing them, so that we can put our emotional, spiritual, physical energy into, Lord, what is it that you have for me? What is the wall that you've called me to scale by the power of the Holy Spirit, that I can lean into this? Is that tracking with what you're saying?
Absolutely. I mean, literally just the other day, because this is like one of my, you know me, I'm always trying to find new rhythms and routines and ways to practice discipline. But one of the things I've been doing throughout this summer is I bought this spiral bound journaling Bible of the New Testament, and I'm keeping it on my countertop because it's a place I spend a lot of time, and I'm opening it up throughout the day rather than taking that break to scroll. I'm opening up the Word of God, and I have a little tally at the front of the journaling Bible that every time I open it, I put a tally, and there's a little quote that I wrote up there just of like, you have a choice every single day of where you're placing your attention. But I opened it up the other day, and I just flipped to random pages, and it was the part where, you know, Saul is going through the conversion to eventually become Paul that we know, that we revere, you know. And when he is struck down and he cannot see, and this was baffling to me, this was mind-blowing to me, that in the King James Version of the Bible, Saul says, Lord, who are you? And then a few sentences later, what do you want me to do? Now, if you look at the ESV translation, though, that second question isn't in there. It's Lord, who are you? And then God says, go into the city and I will tell you what to do. But I was like, hold up, whoa, like I'm taking issue with this, because these two questions right here could guide your entire life, could guide your entire quiet time, could guide all parts of your life. Lord, who are you? Because I want to know you more, not because I need more application, but like because I want to know you. And what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And like, it takes a while, but I mean, I am in this season where I feel like I hear God so clearly, but it took a long time for me to weed out the noise, for me to be so done with the noise, for me to say, I'm exhausted because any moment that I get a break, I'm turning on a podcast to tell me what to do with my life and how to do it better. Or it could just be that I sit in the silence and I realize, it's all right here. And if it's not right here, I have the ability to start stepping towards that. I have the ability to start building something different. But if we're only ever listening to the voices of other people, we're not going to hear it. We're not going to hear the cues. God doesn't need to compete with the noise levels in our lives. And I'm just like over here being like, guys, there's so much richness. There's so much more. But like, we have to weed out the noise.
It's so amazing that you referenced that piece of scripture with Saul before he becomes Paul, because I think the power of asking good questions of the Lord is critical to our formation. And it requires the discipline to slow down, to, discipline ourselves in silence, in hearing the Lord. Prayer is not a monologue, guys. Prayer is a dialogue. It is in part listening. So I love this case study. I was looking this up as you were sharing. 1 Samuel chapter 30. So the situation is Israel had turned against David. The mighty men had turned against David. He's in Ziklag. David gets word, because the city had been pillaged, that the men were going to stone him. And the first thing David does is quiets himself. He strengthens and encourages himself in the Lord. How many of us today need to learn how to strengthen and encourage ourselves in the Lord? The very next thing he does, Hannah, is he inquires of the Lord. Should I pursue this troop? Lord, what's your thoughts on this? He brings his true to the Lord's truth and says, I'm submitting what I see, I'm submitting what I feel, and I'm saying, Lord, I actually need your perspective. And sort of what I extrapolate from what you were just sharing with us, Hannah, is part of this exercise is about dialing down, so much so that not only can we discern the Lord's voice, but we can discern the questions to ask for the season in which we find ourselves, so that we can, Joshua 1:8, meditate upon his law day and night, make our way prosperous and be of good success, because the Lord is always right here. He's a good shepherd. Jesus said, my sheep know my voice, and another they will not follow. But how do we hear the still and the small if we are, if everything else in the world is clamoring for not only our attention, but our buy-in? That's sort of the synthesis of what I just heard you say.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, it's right there in the text. Be still and know that I am God. We're like, I just want to know that you are God without having to be still, because I don't want to sit alone with myself. I don't want to go there. I don't want to face it. I don't want to deal with it. It's uncomfortable. It's hard. And like, yeah, it is. But like, the best things in life are usually hard. They're not easy. And like, I think like, it's one of those things where it's like, I've learned it, like, like I look at like the journals that I've kept in the last few years since starting to unplug, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they are far and beyond like more tender to me than any journal I kept before it, because I feel like now I'm in I don't know, I feel like I have this like intimate, sprawling relationship with God it wasn't that it wasn't there before, but I think it's another thing that you like lose along the way. That like the last time that I ever felt this was back when I was 26 and I had first moved to Atlanta, and I was like, you're young, single, have all the time in the world. So I'd go sit in coffee shops and like read my Bible, and what's crazy to me though now is that it's like, I have arguably so much less time, and yet my spirituality feels so much deeper and richer than it has felt in years, because it's like not just the time that you're sitting and reading the Bible, but it's all the other things that you're doing throughout your day. It's, are you picking up your kid from the carpool line and like, are you immediately getting on your phone? Or is your phone in the center console so that you can have a conversation with your kid? Or is it that you're in every spare pocket of the day, sitting at a red light, being in the grocery store checkout line? Like, are you checking emails? Are you checking things? And it's like, it goes down to like Brother Lawrence, the practice of the presence of God. It's like, God is actually in everything, but we're checking out. We're checking out. Like, and I took email off my phone. I was like, when I send an email to somebody, I am interacting and communicating with another human being, and I want to be present for that. So why am I here in the checkout line checking my email that I don't even intend to respond to right now? I'm not going to respond to it. And that's what I realized was like, I was becoming numb to social interactions. And like, that is something I don't ever want to do. I don't want my friend to text me and be like, hey, I had a really bad day, but because I had way too many notifications come in, I missed it. And I've done that in the past. I know I have missed the ball, and I have gone to friends. I have apologized. I have asked for forgiveness. I think we write the books that like we need to learn again and again and again. But it was like, and that's where it's like, I want to be really clear with this, that I don't think it's necessarily our fault. Like, we're operating in this world where like notification fatigue is a very real thing. And so like, I think at some point though, you have to kind of get mad. You got to get mad at what's happening and mad at the fact that you can't even do a single task without sitting at your computer and being like, what did I set out to do? Like, I had those moments where I was like, I don't even know what I'm trying to focus on. And it's just one of those things where I think like, oh, okay, like we can learn to pay attention. We can learn to be undistracted. But I mean, it's a haul and it's a journey. And here I am thousands of hours later, and I'm telling you, I don't think it gets easier. I don't think it gets easier.
So this is interesting. I want to talk about monotasking then versus multitasking. I love that you cited neuropsychologist Cynthia Kubu. When I read that in your book, I actually Googled the statement, found the article from the Cleveland Clinic. She writes this, check this out. Quote, when the stakes are higher and the tasks are more complex, trying to multitask can negatively impact our lives or even be dangerous. So-called multitasking divides our attention. It makes it harder for us to give our full attention to one thing, like texting and driving, like responding to an email while you're at the grocery line. What do you want to say about monotasking versus multitasking and how that's played out for you?
You know, I think that there is a line somewhere in there. Who knows? Maybe it got cut. I'm not sure. But I just remember writing this line about how, like, paying attention in our world today is like, and like single-mindedly focusing on something is its own act of love. Because, like, it really is. And so I don't know, like, I think I went years thinking I could do all the things. I went years thinking I'll just watch a show and do these tasks. I will just be responding to text and in my inbox and also trying to do deep work. And, you know, like I love Cal Newport. I love digital minimalism, like deep work. And I think all of that stuff works. I 1000% believe like, yeah, we need to get back to a place of deep work and focused work. But like, even when it comes to like digital things, like I will be like, okay, I'm going to designate this time then to be present to these text messages that I'm sending out, rather than just be flippantly like over here, over there, like giving out pieces of myself. And so I don't know, it's definitely a slower way of life, but I'm like, I just feel like there's so much goodness that comes from like slowing down. And you realize like the more that you press offline, the more you realize like, oh, no one asked me to run this race. I put myself in this race. I pushed myself to these limits. I got myself to the brink of burnout. And the more that I unplugged, the less I heard that voice inside of me that was like, go, do, produce, another thing. Like I was just going off of the soundtrack in my life. And if the soundtrack of your life is constant connectivity, that's what you're going to do. And it wasn't until I got offline that I was like, oh, I can follow a recipe out of a cookbook. This feels nice. Oh, we can sit down on a Pizza Friday, no phones in sight, and we can watch a movie together. And this is the thing. I would say if I'm sitting with my husband and we're watching a movie, to me that is unplugged because it's where we are placing our attention. we are watching a film together. Now, if him and I are sitting and watching a movie and also scrolling on our phones, but we do that. Do you notice, like, we do that? You start to watch a show and then you're like, why am I on TikTok? Like, we're layering all these things and we wonder why we're a mess. Like the writing on the wall is very clear. Like, and, you know, I think I'm somebody who operates by like time increments, by pomodoros, by the currency of an hour or 10 minutes or whatever it is. But like, I mean, I think that a lot of us have a really, really bad focus issue. We can't focus, and our brains are really tired, and we want to do so many things, but as a result, we do nothing at all. And I want to give, right? Like, I noticed it in my mind. I was like, all these things I think I'm going to do until I hit the point in the day when I'm supposed to do them. And I say, I don't want to. I'll try again tomorrow. And I think that what happens is we actually have to build back up that focus muscle. And it starts with the little things. It's like, well, can I go on a walk and not have any stimulation? Can I clean my daughter's room without listening to a podcast? Like, you could be cleaning her room and actually praying for her at the same time. But instead, I'm like, you know what? I want to hear about that girl that got murdered in 1989. Like,
JonBenet Ramsey.
Yeah, like, we wonder why we're a mess. It's like, oh my gosh, like, we don't get a break from the voices. We wake up to them. We go to sleep to them. And it's like, you are the only one that gets to live your life, Chris. It's just you at the end of your life. If you didn't live it, no one will mourn the loss of that.
Why you got to call me out right now? No, I'm totally kidding. No, it makes so much sense, Hannah. I want to ask you, because I want to get into the somatic sense of like, what does all this feel like in your body? Because I think one of the things that we're too quick to ignore is what we feel in our bodies. I want to ask you about what envy and bitterness and shame and depression feels like in your body. But I just got to segue and get off the expressway really quickly. I have been on this quest to step into minimalism in my life even more. Mm-hmm. 2 weeks ago, I was researching lifestyle in the early 1950s. The average home size in early 1950, let me go to my notes here. The average home size for a family of four in the early 1950s was 983 square feet. That's emblematic of what's possible. Yeah. I like my little life. I like the simplicity. I love good books, good food cooked at home.
Yep.
What do you think is motivating? This is why I love Gen Z so much. I'm learning so much from Gen Z right now about minimalism, stepping into this. This is not like Marie Kondoing our entire lives, although I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm like, I think I'm going to declutter after this.
Yeah, like, any thoughts on any of that? I haven't even told you this yet, but I am thinking, oh gosh, what would it look like for me to
You're going to a tiny house.
Well, a little bigger. I'm actually looking at that right now, like 750, 800 square feet.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you think a lot of these conversations are pointing toward everything you're saying right now? I want to be more present. I want to be more effective in relationships. All I know is I feel it, like, right here. I feel it.
You know, it's so funny because it's like, it's the things that you're talking about that you're like, and I think that was part of like when you shared that line about like building the life and like how I didn't even realize when I did this, that this is what was going to happen. And I felt that confirmation from the Lord over and over and over again. Like, you are the rhythm setter in your family. Like, you are in essence, like, you are the magic maker. And that is a gift of mine. And what I think is so funny about it is that I remember years ago taking a spiritual gifts quiz, and I scored the lowest on hospitality and the highest on teaching and leadership. And I remember being like, oh, good, because teaching and leadership, like, that's where you get seen. So, like, we're good, because, like, that's where I'm meant to be. And I remember thinking, this is going to sound so bad, and I just want you all to know that I know it sounds so bad, but I remember thinking, like, oh, hospitality must be that gift that you do when you can't do other things. I understand how horrible that sounds. Because I think even in like a lot of times in church culture, like hospitality is just like, it's in the background. No one ever sees it, you know? It's like, until like literally I realized, oh my gosh, I actually think that was like spiritual warfare, because like one of my greatest gifts is actually hospitality, because hospitality in essence is the art of making people feel seen and known. And like, what I realized in that with like what you were talking about is like downsizing your life, or like we set a foundation for our family in that year. And I mean this because I unplugged. No one else unplugged. Lane did not do it with me. I did not force our family into a challenge. I did it. And as a result, things came into being that we practice today. Pizza Friday, one of our favorite things. Going to the door and blessing people each week. Being generous. Like practicing the Sabbath. Making homemade meals. I mean, we make almost all our meals at home, and we used to be takeout people. And like, we marvel all the time about how we're like, man, we love this life. We love this life, but we fought for this life. We fought for it. And it comes down to every single day being like, what am I fighting for? Like, if you feel, there was this line from, John Acuff's book that I just read, and it was so good, where he was talking about, he said, it was about in regards to finding mentors and coaches, but he wrote these words. He just said, fruit is loud. And I was like, what? Like, fruit is loud. Like, you can walk into somebody's life and you can know if they are busy and they are scattered and they are not at peace with themselves. And I think for me, the wake-up call was, oh my gosh, I am striving for all these things that I don't even want anymore. I don't even want these things anymore. When you get clear, like when I get clear about like what I actually want, I want to be a present and joyful mom. I want a clean, organized, minimal space so that like we can focus on like building love and connectedness in this place. I want to be the friend that shows up at the door. I want to like write words that just make people feel deeply seen. But these are the things that we get away from when we get into these portals and everybody starts telling us what we need and what we want. Like, that's like one of the dangers that I feel like of being like a pseudo influencer online. It's like, I can recommend a product and I better be sure that this is a product that is good, because I know people are going to spend money on it. And like, and I'm the same way. I'll go on to Instagram and she's wearing a really cute outfit from Amazon. And I'm like, I need that. Add to cart. Oh, it can be here tomorrow. Amazing. But like the good stuff, the really good stuff, it's slow burning. And like, I think part of it that we miss is that we have to build the palate for it. We have to build the palate for it.
Oh my gosh, the good stuff is slow burning. Folks, write that down, write that down, write that down. The good stuff is slow burning.
But I think to come to you, Chris, because I was feeling this as we were talking, I think the reason maybe like you feel some of that like inner turmoil is because you are a slow cooker in an Instapot world.
Say more.
You are a slow cook. You are somebody who goes deep. You are loyal. You are a loyal friend. You give your life to your people. So yes, obviously it's going to hurt bad when they do not reciprocate, because you got to learn that that's actually your superpower. You have to let people off the hooks you built for them. But I mean it in the sense of like, there's a restlessness in you because you are meant to operate at a pace that is more peace-filled than anything this world is ever going to give us. And like, for you, I think you're right at the cusp of it. You're about to move into the tiny home. But for other people, I think that if you would just slow down, you would start to realize, oh my gosh, I don't even want to run at this pace. Because it adds nothing to my life, because it makes me feel exhausted, because I want to actually live and savor my life. And like, whenever you read the Bible, you're like, oh, it's a slow moving book. Like, that's what that is. Like, it's a slow cooker story, you know? And we're like slow cooker spirits trying to operate in this world that's like, throw it in the microwave. Just run to the drive-thru.
Oh, gosh.
It's your turn to cry. No, I'm kidding.
Maybe. No, I've done that. I've done that enough today. I don't know. We'll see what happens. No, I mean, Hannah, here's the thing. You're right. I receive everything you're saying. I've got your back. Like, I have your back. I have Lane's back. I love you guys. I have your back.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, that's just not me being, I don't even need to say that. I have your back. I have your back. And so, yeah, you're right. And I'm thankful for it. You've been loyal to me, and yeah, just super thankful for you guys. Okay, let me just swing this into this then. Earlier we talked about how to break up well. How does all of this conversation today inform and infect today's current dating scene? Because there are a ton of millennials and Gen Z listening to this podcast right now.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah.
And they're saying, I've swiped right and it's going okay, or I've been dating so-and-so for 3 years and I don't know where this is going. And there are some people listening going, I've been single for so long, I feel guilty that I don't know if I want a relationship right now. What's your thoughts on all that? As someone, you guys have been married 8 years?
It'll be 8 years. Yeah. Which, yeah, it's crazy. We met on a dating app. So, like,
I love it. I'm all about it.
But I always tell people, too, like, the dating app, like, if you're meeting people online on a dating app, which is, like, most of us, because people don't leave the house anymore and you're not meeting people at Whole Foods, like, that's literally the least interesting part of our story is the how we met story. And I think people need to get off that ride. People need to stop thinking it's got to be, like, fireworks and super romantic or ashamed that they met on Hinge or Tinder. I feel like I always say it's not about how we met. It's how we met over and over and over again, and how we meet when it's hard, and how we meet when it's boring and mundane and lackluster. And I mean, like, how do we meet in the struggle? And I'll never forget this. It's so funny because, like, when I think about unplugging, I'm like, this has been a part of my story for so long that I didn't even realize the threads that were weaving themselves. But when I was in college, I was on the newspaper staff, and I had been asked to cover this, like, lecture series. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think I wanted to go, but I was covering it. And there wasn't a lot of people there at all. It was a very small audience of people. And I still remember it clear as day. She was a professor from Boston University. Her name is Carrie Cronin. She may still be there. But she shared about relationships and relationships in the tech age because she started getting curious with the students around campus. She started to say, okay, like, so how's dating going? And all the students were like, we're not dating, we're hooking up. We're not dating, we're hooking up. And so she created a class where it might have been Boston College, actually. This was like 15 years ago, but either Boston University or Boston College. But she created a class where the sole premise of the class was to date. And in order to pass this class, you needed to, like, be calling people up on the phone, asking them out to dates with your voice. You needed to be picking them up, taking them to the restaurant, paying for the meals. Like, that was the whole curriculum, was like, can you show up in person and date? And that was 15 years ago. And I'm like, look at us now. And so it's like, gosh, I just want to be like, I want to be like, I'm sorry, because I know it sucks. It kind of sucks out there. But I also think that, like, there are good people out there, and it only takes one. It only takes one. And so it's like, yeah, we met on a dating app, but from that point forward, it was on both of us to say, you know what? These apps were designed to be deleted, and we need to get off the apps and build the relationship. And I can't take credit for that because I think it's Hinge that's their tagline, the app that's designed to be deleted.
That's great.
Which I'm like, marketing genius. But like, genius. I think the problem is that we're living in this world where it almost just fills your brain with this belief that if it's not that person, there are more options out there. And, like, people become, like, collecting cards and, like,
pieces of content to use the words we
pieces
used
of
earlier.
content. Yep. And I've seen it. Like, we know a person who like would meet people on dating apps, and the second that he got bored or it got mundane, would go right back to the apps, would go right back to scrolling. And I think what people need to realize in dating and in life is that a lot of it is actually mundane, and that's not bad, and that your life can be found in the ordinary. Because I think we like these stories where we like burn it all down, where we go to like different countries and we eat and pray and love, even though I do love Liz Gilbert so much, but like, that's not real life. Real life is actually right here. And so like, you might like want to travel the world, and that's great. And I think that you should, but I also think there's value in like turning off the phone and like learning to love your family, or at least pay attention to your kids, or saying, you know what, I felt like crap for the longest time. You know what? I think I'm going to pay attention to making meals for myself, or at least learning how to cook for myself. That's where the life happens, is when we use our hands and we cultivate skills, and like we get back to who we were designed to be, which is creative individuals. And I don't mean creative in the sense of like, you have to write a novel or you have to produce a play. All of life is creation. And we're just not doing it anymore because we're getting these quick fixes that are telling us it's enough, but we wonder why we're so deeply lonely and depressed.
I wonder if the future is actually ancient.
I want to believe that, but I also
I'm an
think
old
that we're
soul,
heading...
so I go that way, you know, like whatever. I'm an old soul.
We're heading towards WALL-E. Did you see the movie WALL-E?
No.
Oh my gosh.
Adding to the list.
The people, they sit in the little chairs and they eat and drink liquids all day, and they live in a virtual reality, and their avatars go and live for them. It's really sad, but it's actually kind of prophetic.
Earlier today, as part of the social media thing, I deleted several apps from my phone and realized I can actually manage this from a desktop setting, and I don't need to be looking at these all the time. But then the second thing I did, Hannah, look. So guys, if you're watching on YouTube, I'll show you my phone. I grayscaled my phone out.
Oh, yep.
So it's like Palm Pilot circa 1999 or whatever. And I am way less prone to even want to look at it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give you guys some great dating advice. Hannah, I'm going to quote you. I said it earlier. I'm going to say it again.
Dear.
This is, okay. Go to the show notes, wintoday.tv, guys. Get a copy of my dear friend's book. This thing is an offering. Chapter 10, page 65. You're looking for dating advice for this weekend? Lean in. Here it is. So, Hannah and Lane, I'm literally like, I don't want to sound voyeuristic right now, but I'm reading your book. You guys, so Hannah and Lane were on their third date, and this is what, no, I'm reading the book. So Hannah and Lane are on their third date. Hannah says in here, first line, I knew I wanted to marry Lane on our third date. Fast forward a few paragraphs. They make dinner. He makes, what does he make? Something on orzo.
Orzo pasta with scallops.
There it is.
Ooh.
Yeah. So here it is, guys. I'm just going to read it to you. This is the best dating advice. I underline this because I think it's fire. Cue the music. After dinner, we prepared the brownie mix together and watched Garden State. There was a moment as we waited for the brownies to bake. By the way, what brand? Do you remember? Ghirardelli?
Dear God, no, I don't. It was probably Ghirardelli.
Right on. They make a pretty good box. Yeah. Okay. Back
Or
plot
like
twist. Here we go.
Pillsbury.
Let's go. Okay, so brownies are in the oven when he and I stood on opposite sides of the kitchen island talking casually, and I looked around. I'd borrowed a pair of his woolly socks. Cue the music. Dishes were in the sink. The recipe he'd printed at work lay on the counter. A bottle of red sat on the island between us. Hannah, you're one of my favorite writers ever. I'll keep going. And for that first time in any dating scenario I'd ever been in, I thought this could be everyday life. Here's the dating advice, y'all. I'd done the impressive dates. I'd done the fancy restaurants and activities. But what I was looking for was someone to partner with. Here's the thread. Here's the thesis. Maybe we start landing the plane on this conversation now. I'd like to propose that the prophetic invitation that you've given us to unplug is to come alive, to be more present, relentlessly present, so that we see ourselves and engage with others and maybe realize, maybe there's someone listening right now that's like, maybe the ideal of what I have been expecting has caused me to miss what's right in front of my face. And what I really want is a partner for life. I didn't mean to turn this into a dating episode, but in a way, like, here we go. That's brilliant prose, by the way. I'm watching this going, I could see McConaughey in this scene. I could see Kate Hudson in this scene. I could see Anne Hathaway in this scene. I could see... It's good prose, Hannah.
But see, and that goes back to what we were saying, though. It's like writing this book as the person that I set out to write books because I wanted to make people feel something. Not because I wanted to fix people's lives. I'm not qualified for that. I don't want to do that. And I have no disrespect to anybody that wants to do that, but it's just not me. I just want to tell stories and make people feel things. And I mean, in regards to like that story and like building a life, I think that it's like, especially because we can be so voyeuristic, because we can see that person's promposal and it
that
looks
is
like
the word. That is the word.
Yeah, voyeuristic, right? Then like without even realizing it, you're kind of like, oh well, my relationship doesn't look like their relationship, and so maybe my relationship isn't as good. And we see it everywhere. I mean, we see it with moms looking like they're like the perfect moms online, or we see it with fitness regimes. We see it in everything. We're just watching each other, but like it's never going to replace the feeling of just deciding to say, I want to be in my life. And it's going to be gritty and it's going to be imperfect. And it's not always going to feel like it's document worthy. And that's okay, because that was never actually the intent, right? Like if we were to always live from like a pace of like fireworks, like I don't think we could keep up. I think it's one of those things where it's like, and I give so much like credit to Lane for this, because like Lane was already doing it, and
he's
like Lane, he's a good man, and like he I don't know, like those were that was us from the beginning. Was like Lane wanted to like put time and energy into like, I'm gonna make this meal and it's gonna be amazing, and if no one ever knew that this meal was had, it's still gonna be just as good. I mean, that man is literally like every day maybe the best day of his life, the best meal of his life. Like that's the attitude that he lives with. And here I am showing up with the brownie mix because that's who I was at the time. And I just remember this moment, and it was like long before I ever started unplugging. And I think I wrote about it in Come Matter Here, where I had gone to this conference, and at the end of the conference, or somewhere in the middle, they asked us to, I think it was after the first day, they asked us to spread out all over the ballroom, lay down, get a comfortable spot. And they wanted us to visualize what our lives looked like 5 years in the future. And at the time, I'm 25. I am traveling literally every week to speak on stages. My first book is about to come out. Like my TED Talk is exploding all over the place. I had all the things, you know? And I laid down, and I remember thinking like, oh, I hate these things. I hate having to visualize my life. Like, just go and do it. Don't visualize it. Do it. And I laid down, and I think I was not even there for a minute when I just started weeping, sobbing. Because the moment I closed my eyes and I asked myself the question of like, what do I want my life to look like 5 years from now? I got this clear picture, and I was in a house. And I was with somebody. I didn't know who it was, but I knew whoever I was, like that was my partner. That was my person. And we were sitting on the countertops, and there was music playing, and there was Christmas lights strewn around the house, and there were people coming in and out of the house like we were having some kind of party or something. And I remember weeping because I realized, oh, like, I've just been running so hard towards what I thought I wanted that I never even stopped to even ask myself, what do you want at the end of all of this? And when I got still for just a moment and that vision became very clear, I was crying, not because it was a beautiful vision, but because everything that I had built up until that point was not leading me towards that life. And that if I were to keep going, I was not going to have that life. I would miss that life. And that was a big wake-up call for me. And that was the start of my journey towards more presence. And I think that is my life mission, of just being present. But it was the realization of like, oh, I have to build this life brick by brick by brick. And if I'm not going in the right direction, then I need to recalculate the route, and I need to get serious about it. And so to bring it back to dating, because we keep coming back to dating, I would say to you, whoever is listening this, if you are deeply, desperately wanting somebody to do your life with, make sure that you are living a life that you love. And if you don't love it, you need to change some things, because when that person comes into your orbit, like, you're either going to adapt to whatever life they have, or you are going to be able to forge those lives together. Because before meeting Lane, every person that I would meet, whatever they wanted, I could become that. You want the cool girl? I'll be the cool girl. You want the carefree girl? I'll be the carefree girl. You want this? I'll be that. Like, and what happened was, right before I met Lane, I broke up with a guy. I was deeply shattered. One, because I really cared about him, but also because I was like, oh gosh, I'm back in the singlehood gauntlet that I said I never wanted to be again. And I felt ashamed and I was sad. And I remember sitting, and here it's another thread, sitting at my friend's table when they took away my social media passwords, and they said, you need to go offline for a month. We want you to go offline. And in that month, I did a Whole30, which I fell in love with Whole30. I started a workout group in my neighborhood because I loved fitness. And so 3 days a week, we would be in my friend's driveway and I would train the girls in the neighborhood. We'd all bring our weights and we would do workouts together. I started babysitting my friends' kids. I started reaching out to my friends being like, what do you need? What can I do? Do you want to go on a date night? And it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to babysit their kids, but I said I wanted to be a rooted person. So I needed to root myself. I needed people to depend on me. And I built the life that I wanted to live. And I really felt like I built it in that 30 days. There were definitely things that would build from there. But I mean, I felt so much like myself because I knew the things that made me come alive, but the noise had covered it up. And then a month later, I got online, I got on Hinge, I went on a date with Lane. And the most beautiful thing was that I wasn't sitting across from him expecting for him to complete me, expecting for him to be the missing piece that I thought I was looking for. I was sitting there being like, I love my life. I love who I am. And I'm just so excited that he gets to meet me at a point where I just love what's going on. And that's where I would say, like, I know you might feel lonely. I know you might feel tired of the gauntlet, but just look around your life and say, is this the life that I want to be living? And if it's not, start to change it little by little, bit by bit. Become your truest sense of yourself, because then when you meet somebody who is the truest sense of themselves, you will just be add-ons to each other. You will be supplements to each other, and you two together will be the powerhouse. That's it. That's the whole thing right there. It's like unplugging was there all along. It is, I'm shocked.
This is so good. Hannah, 4 things that I felt amid burnout that hit 90 days ago. And then shutting down social media, working with my counselor, and I made this determination felt prompted by the Holy Spirit through this, but 4 things I was to focus on, and I don't know how long this social media detox is going to last, whatever. 4 things in particular. Honestly, these are the 4 things for me.
Yeah.
Get good sleep every night.
Yep.
Eat good food. Move my body and lift heavy weights. Prioritize the intimacy with the Lord. Sorry, there were 5 things. And
5 things.
Invest in the people who matter most to me and the people that I really believe I'm going to run with. Hannah, that's it. Notice there's no call to create content in that. There's no call to become a better preacher. There's no call to become a better writer. You and I have shared this, and I just thank you for it, for giving me the impetus to this. I look back at my book now, and it's at this time a few months old. It's not even a toddler yet.
Yeah, yeah.
It's maybe sitting up on its own right now. What I've learned is that I actually really love the art of writing because I love to write. Because I love to write. Yeah. Because I love to write. Anne Lamott, that's my BFF.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Mother Anne.
And, gosh, what's his name? Zimmerman? What is that book called? I've got it in my shelf. I think his last name is Zimmerman. It's another extraordinary writing book, but anyway. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, I have no idea how to land this plane of this gorgeous conversation today. I just want to say I'm thankful for you. I believe in you. Why don't you give us a distillation of maybe a thesis, a synthesis of today that you'd say to folks, listen, we've put it all on the field today. Here's what I want you to know. Here's what I want you to do. We talked earlier about what are the questions we should ask the Lord. What are the questions you'd want folks joined with us to ask of themselves and of the Lord as they grow?
Okay, this is kind of a question. It's also a practical thing that you can do because I'm very practical. I'm like, where's the how, But one of the things that I do often, whenever I feel like I'm in chaos, whenever I feel like I'm like, oh my gosh, my mind is all over the place, I will typically turn off my phone. That's usually the first thing that I do. And if I can move a little bit, I'll go for a walk around the block. But I will come back to my desk and I will create what I like to call a what's not working list. Not a what's working list, because we love to look at what's working, but what isn't working. And I get deeply honest with myself where it's like, you know what? I'm missing important things, or I'm just feeling like I'm all over the place, or I keep saying I'm going to do things and then I'm not, and I'm breaking promises to myself, or there's way too many notifications. Like whatever goes onto your list, I'm eating crap, I'm not sleeping. And then what I do when I have been honest with myself is I just start to say like, okay, is there something really tiny that I can move towards today that looks like fixing this? And that's all it is. It's all these small things. And I think what we don't realize is like the small things are the big things. That's it. And if you have spent years checking in, but actually checking out, then it's going to take some time. But I also want you to know that those small little acts of love and grace and dignity, like drinking the glass of water, or the person that says, I want to read books, but I don't read books. All I do is scroll. What if you just read one page tonight? Just one page. But look at that list. Look at what's not working and start to find the tiny action steps that look like just like even 0.5% of a shift in a better direction, and follow through with that thing. I think like we break our own hearts when we say we want to do these things and we can't follow through with the promises. And that's usually because overhauls don't work and because we're trying to operate at a pace that's going to lead us to a place of burnout anyway. And so look at your personal list and then say, okay, if this is the person that I want to be, if I want to be the person who is present, who is kind, who shows up for my friends, who is in the Word, what are the habits that person would cultivate? And just start to do those things. Because when you start to do those things and you start to feel like you're coming alive, the other things like the scrolling and the mindlessness and the checking, like that stuff is naturally going to start to be less appealing because you're going to have some victory under your belt. So make your what's not working list and go from there.
And there it is. Hannah, your gift. Thank you.
This has been the best. This was so cathartic.
I'm so glad.
I don't think I have ever wept on a podcast, but I wept.
Well, I thank you for your vulnerability. I pray I stewarded that moment well, because none of this is for theatrics or for show or for effect. Like, this is two friends having a conversation, and I'm thankful that you feel safe in this environment to do so. Okay, before we land the plane here, like the practicality of it, is there anything besides the book that like resources that you want folks to hook up with? Obviously, I'm going to just promote the stuffing out of this and tell people to just connect with you and everything you're doing. But any additional resources that would be a value add aside from the book, guys? I really just want to promote Hannah's work because she's a woman of integrity and excellence, and I really believe in her. So,
well, I appreciate the plug for the book. But I'm not going to recommend any more resources, and I'm not even going to recommend the book. Well, that's bad. My publisher would say recommend the book. But I'm going to say here, you don't need more resources. You probably just need to get away for a moment and check in with yourself. Like, just check in with yourself. And that's coming from somebody who always wants the resource list. I want it. I want the podcast. I want the books that I need to read. But sometimes I just need to get alone with myself and be able to ask, are you okay? And what do I need to do to become okay? And so that's what I'm going to say. The resource is go sit in a quiet room with yourself for 15 minutes and maybe bring a journal and a Bible.
That's it. That's it. That's it.
Oh, this is the best. This is the best. And we made it like an hour and a half. We are Joe Rogan. We are him.
Yeah, we hit Rogan level. So we've been, since we said hi, it's been 2 hours and 25 minutes. Wow, we've been recording for an hour 45. Sorry, folks, you don't get the other half hour because that's just us as friends hanging out, catching up. But an hour 45 is good. You dropped the hammer today. I think I want to say this to you publicly. Hannah, you live every word you write. And I'm proud of you. Like, I am so proud of you, and am cheering you on and cheering Lane on. I count it a joy, even from Detroit, to watch Sweet Novi grow up, and I'm just proud of you. You're the real deal.
Thank you. Thank you. That is my hope, my dream, to be the real deal. So
good.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.